So in today's video, we're going to be covering how to turn ice cold prospects into happy paying customers with one sales call, complete sales process. So this isn't just going to be a sales script. It's going to be walking you guys what to do before the call, how to deliver the script in the most effective way possible, pre-selling mechanisms. This is literally the entire sales process from ice cold prospect into a happy paying customer. So introduction. This is the exact sales process I've used to close about $8,000 in deals so far for 2023. Today's date is February 12th, so about 40 something days into the new year. This video isn't just going to be covering a sales script, but the entire sales process from start to finish. I'm not going to be holding back anything. This is going to change your entire perspective on sales and business. So, the sale begins before the call. To start off the training, I'm going to be covering sales assets and the energy it takes to turn an ice cold prospect into a happy paying customer, the 7-hour rule. The 7-hour rule states that all prospects should consume 7 hours of content related to your company before getting on a sales call with you. This content includes video sales letters, case studies, testimonials, educational videos, email newsletters, social media content, etc. Now, it's going to be extremely hard to reach 7 hours of consumed content, especially if your agency is relatively new, but you should aim as high as possible. The secret to a short sales cycle is having extremely powerful mid and bottom of the funnel content. This content can take time to build, but is extremely worth it because it increases the most important lever in your business, which is your close rate. So, I have a little demonstration right here that I'm actually going to show you guys so you can really understand this idea. So, the first touch with a prospect for a lot of us, if we're just getting started, is outbound. So, that might be a cold email or a cold message, and that's our first interaction with a prospect. And at that point, they are ice cold, right? They're a cold lead, and we need to figure out how to get them from, message sent, being a cold lead, all the way to invoice paid, and which is basically hot, and it takes about 1,000 feet to cross this line. And what I mean by consuming content is certain types of content and sales touch points apply energy that moves them across this line. So, for example, what a lot of people are doing who aren't using the 7-hour rule, the only thing that happens between the time that a prospect books a call is there's a cold message sent, so that moves them about 30 feet, right? So they'd be like right here. And then they send them a follow-up or, 1 or 2 reminders, that moves them another 50 feet, so total 80 feet. And the prospect is still right here, and they're getting on the sales call, and on one call, they're trying to move them all the way from here to here. And that's why their close rate is a lot lower than it should be, because they're having to do all the heavy lifting on a sales call. Whereas if they sent them a case study and the prospect watched the case study, that would move them 200 feet closer. If they sent them testimonials, that would move them another 300 feet closer. If they gave a written confirmation 24 hours before the call, that's going to move them another 200 feet closer. If you invited them to join your Facebook group, that's going to move them another 150 things closer, and then you send them a reminder or a personalized video before the call, and that's going to move them this much closer. So you guys get it. All these are sales assets, and there's a lot more examples of these, and they're emitting energy that's bringing that prospect from here to here. And then so by the time you get on a sales call with them, all you have to do is move them, from here to here, which is a lot easier than what most people are trying to do, which is moving the prospect all the way from here to here. So this is sales assets. And then you'll notice, one thing says referred from client. So, and the reason why referral is 900 feet, because it's the most powerful sales asset of all time, because, someone the prospect knows and trusts is referring you to them, so subconsciously they already know and trust you. And that's why this applies, 900 feet worth of energy. So this is the power of, sales assets and using energy. So how can we actually get our prospects to consume content outside of them, checking our social media page or maybe browsing our website? So The easiest way to get your prospect to consume lots of sales assets before a call is with an indoctrination sequence. This is an email automation sequence that gets triggered when a sales call is booked and can easily be set up in Go High Level. So I'm actually going to give you guys my indoctrination sequence template so you can actually use this in your agency or your consulting business. So this is the first email you're going to send, and you want this to go out immediately as soon as they book a call. So if you're using Go High Level, this doesn't mean you have to send them your appointment link. It just means that you have to, basically book it with them manually. You could enter it into your scheduler yourself, but you want to set up an automation that gets triggered when that link gets used. So it doesn't matter if it's you or the prospect using the link, you just want that to be the trigger of the automation, and you want to send out this email immediately. So subject to the email, appointment details, then put the little dash, then you can input the prospect's name using Go High Level. So, hey, first name, thank you for booking an appointment on, and then using Go High Level, you can automatically input the appointment date that was used by the scheduler. Here are some links that would be useful to go through before our call. So then you can add, training content, reviews, case studies, and even if you're just getting started and you don't have case studies, just make educational content, that shows off your expertise in your niche, and, make it a sales letter, like kind of towards the end of the video, explain how, what you just showed them in that video, explain how your service does that for them. But you really want them to consume content. Obviously, case studies, emit a lot more energy, but if you don't have case studies yet, then you just want to make educational content and send that to them before the call. But obviously, best is, training content. So that might be video sales letters, free training, YouTube videos, a video you posted on your Facebook page, LinkedIn, etc. And then reviews and case studies, you can make a page on your website that's literally just all case studies, and you can link that there. So, and then next, you'll notice I actually send them a Zoom sign-up link, and this is to emit the status and set the frame of the call that, we're a professional company. And, so we're basically setting the agenda for the call before the call even happens. So please make sure that you're in a quiet room and do not take the call from your car, airport, or any noisy environment. Have your computer/laptop at the ready. If you're in a partnership, please make sure all partners are on the call. So we're already setting them up to respect us and our time before the call, and we're setting the frame before we even get on that call with them. So, and then you're going to set, the appointment details. Now this part will depend on your niche. I'm in the real estate niche, so that's why mine is like this. But you just would kind of want to set the agenda of the call, before it even takes place. So I will dig deep to learn more about your current situation as a real estate agent. I will ask you about your goals in real estate and life. We will isolate the problem holding you back from your goals if there currently is one. I will walk you through our solution only if you are a good fit. So again, we're setting the agenda of the call. Please make sure that you add this event to your preferred calendar using the link below. So again, in Go High Level, there's a variable that you can add, and you just put that right there, and it would, if they clicked on it, it would add it to their calendar if they don't already have it already. So I look forward to speaking with you. P.S. If you are unable to make the call and need to reschedule, please let me know beforehand. We invest time and money into these calls and appreciate a little heads up if anything changes. So again, you're setting the status of you and your company, and they're going to respect you a lot more going into the call. So speak soon, and then you can put your name. And then email 2. This one is probably the most crucial in the indoctrination sequence, and this gets sent out 24 hours before the call. So subject is written confirmation needed. Hey, first name, thanks again for booking the call. Due to high demand, we require written confirmation that you will attend the call. Please reply to this email to hold your spot within 24 hours, else your appointment will be canceled. I'm looking forward to chatting. P.S. And then you want to insert a sales asset. So, that might be another case study, might be a free training. It might just be, even a email newsletter that's written out in like a blog format, just anything that's content they can consume that's related to you and your company and setting up that positioning. And then thanks, Jackson. So you're probably wondering, why are we asking for written confirmation? So this is getting them to just engage with us, and this applies a lot of energy, right? So written confirmation, that applies like 200 feet because, it's another touch point in the sales process, and it's them engaging with us, which makes them more committed. And on the plus side, it actually works as a filter. So, it's our job to sift through prospects to find the qualified ones. More on this later, but this actually is going to save you a lot of time. So even if you don't get a written confirmation, you can still take the call with them. This is really just to also just try to get them to respond, and that emits a lot of sales energy, but it also sets the positioning and the frame and the status before the call. But if they do not give this written confirmation, I do not take the call with them. I send them an email an hour before the call, basically canceling it, saying if this was a mistake, you can reschedule. You don't have to do that if you're at a point where you just need to take a lot of calls. But I noticed that everyone who was giving a written confirmation was super qualified, and everyone who wasn't, they were just window shoppers. They were just curious in what I had to offer. They had no intention of buying, and that's why they didn't give a written confirmation. So this when I did this, it started filtering out 50% of my calls, but my closing rate immediately tripled, and I stopped wasting time, a little bit time on unqualified leads. And you're still going to get some that come through that aren't qualified, because not everyone's going to be qualified for your offer, but this filters out a huge chunk, and it sets the frame of the call. So written confirmations, complete game changer. You'll only know it until you try it, and about 50% of the prospects will reply if you have a good offer. That's at least what I've seen. So email number 3, 1 to 2 hours before the call. Hey, first name, here's the Zoom link, and you can put this in Go High Level and it will automatically input the Zoom link. See you at, again, appointment time, you can automatically do this in Go High Level. If you haven't gotten a chance, make sure to watch this video before our call. And then this is where you want to put your video sales letter, which, all agencies, you should have a video sales letter. A common misconception is that you need case studies for a video sales letter. You do not. Obviously, it makes the video sales letter way more effective, but you can make one without a case study, okay? So don't think that you're limited to it if you don't have a case study yet. And you want them to watch this video before the call, and this is supposed to, knock down that domino in their head of why they need your service and create an epiphany of why they need your service. And you'll notice it says 1 to 2 hours before the call. If your video sales letter is really long, then send it 2 to 3 hours before the call. But if it's really short, you can send it an hour before. But you want them to watch this and it to be fresh on their mind going into the call. You can even send this, 6 hours before if you want. I do it about 2 hours before the call. So email number 4, 10 minutes before the call. So this can be done through SMS or email. I do it through SMS, and this depends on your niche. So real estate agents, it's really easy to get their phone number, and I don't have to ask for it. So it's really easy just to add that in to Go High Level in their booking link. But if you're in a niche where, it's harder to get a phone number, you can send this via email. But we want this to go out, 10 minutes before the call, just kind of as a final last reminder to make sure, if they're getting distracted, that they do remember we have a call. And just, hey, first name, this is an automated reminder that our Zoom call starts in 10 minutes. Here's the Zoom link. Looking forward to speaking with you. So, my prospects basically get texted this 10 minutes before the call. And this is going to really help your show up rate in case someone was doing something else and, they weren't really paying attention to the clock. So that's the entire indoctrination sequence. Really, the whole point is to, 1, set the frame of the call, get them to consume lots of content, and 3, get that written confirmation to filter out leads and get them to engage with us, which increases the touch points in the sales process and creates sales energy that moves them closer to becoming a happy paying customer. So that's the indoctrination sequence. You can I would leave it at least those. You can even add to it. If you have a lot of case studies, you can add another email in the middle of there that maybe goes out 15 hours before the call, and it can say, hey, and then it'll just be a story with a case study link. And the more you send them, the better, because you want them to consume those. You want to aim for that 7-hour rule. And something to keep in mind is that if your social media pages, if you're posting a lot of content on them, oftentimes, if you have LinkedIn Premium, you can see who views your profile. Literally 60% of the time, I'll see a prospect view my LinkedIn profile before a sales call. So you have to realize that counts as consuming content as well. So this is where you want to be consistently posting valuable content that positions you as an expert on your LinkedIn, on your Facebook, on your Instagram, and they're also going to be consuming that, and that, goes towards the content that they consume before a call. So something else to keep in mind. So, positioning your status delta. The only way your prospects will comply and listen to you is if there is a status delta present. If a police officer knocks on someone's door and flashes a badge, they have instant status delta and the stranger will comply with their request. So that's what status delta is. And if the salesperson fails to create a status delta, the prospect will not comply and the sale won't close. You want to create a status delta as quickly as possible, and it starts with your indoctrination sequence. You'll notice we start setting the frame of the call and asking for written confirmation. This starts creating the status delta before the call. But you must be able to maintain it once met face to face with a prospect. So this is how you maintain a status delta, where you can make demands that the prospect will comply with. And so physical representation. Now, some of these might sound obvious, but I promise you'd be surprised. A lot of people, just look over this. So you don't need to wear designer clothing, but you should wear something professional and high quality. My go-to shirt for a sales call is a Polo Ralph Lauren button-up, but really any high quality button-up shirt contributes towards your status delta. Always make sure to have neat hair and a clean shave to show the prospect you respect them. Like this one is it sounds obvious, but I see so many people that just take sales calls and they have they don't have a clean shave. And this having a clean shave, it shows the prospect that you respect them and it contributes towards your status. And all this might sound silly, but I promise you these little things make massive differences. It's also extremely important to have a clean environment that contributes towards your status delta. Have a clean and presentable background with good lighting. I've heard from people above me that having a visible Rolex or another nice watch on a sales call is known to improve conversions by 5%. LOL. This is especially true if you're selling to sophisticated buyers. So obviously, you don't need a Rolex, but just something to keep in mind that people who are higher up than me have told me it has increased their sales conversions and they've tracked it, right? So it's just something that's a little interesting and has to do with, the psychology of influence and status. So tonality and body language. Tonality and body language will have a bigger influence on your prospect than words. So that's a line from Jordan Belfort, who you'll know as the Wolf of Wall Street. Speaking fast communicates lower status, and this is something that I struggle with sometimes. So make sure to speak at a professional pace. So, it's just something to be, conscious of. Slow down for important phrases and speed up for transitions. So you'll notice I kind of do that. When I'm going over something important, I'll slow down, and that makes people pay more attention to it. So this is something you want to practice as you work on sales calls. So if you're hunched over or have any slouch, this also communicates lower status delta. Make sure to sit up straight and have good posture. Using your hands when you're speaking also communicates higher status. So again, this stuff all sounds kind of silly and obvious, but I promise you, I'll rewatch someone's sales footage and they're slouched over like this. They're not talking with their hands. They're talking really fast, and it's hard to notice when you're doing it yourself. But when you start watching your sales footage and you really pay attention to this stuff, you can kind of see subconsciously how the prospect reacts. So it's just something that you really want to make an effort to be aware of and work on, and it's going to help you hold this status where the prospect will really listen to what you have to say and abide by your request. So tonality, and tonality is an unspoken language and weapon of influence that communicates with your prospect's unconscious mind. So a lot of times on the sales calls, we're only going to see the prospect's body language and what they're saying, but there's an internal conversation going on in their head, and the easiest way to influence that is with tonality. So there's 5 main tonalities in sales that you're going to use and leverage. The first one is the certainty tone. So this tone is used to communicate confidence and rock solid certainty. So if someone asks me, if I want to make them certain that my product has an ROI, I'm going to talk like, this will make you money. And you see how my tone just changed there, and it kind of gives this contagious certainty that rubs off on the prospect. So, and this stuff takes a while to master, and literally you want to be practicing this. Like the best salespeople are practicing, in front of a mirror or in front of a camera, literally just practicing their tonality, because this stuff takes time. But this stuff is extremely powerful, right? Because, I could give you the script for the movie Titanic, but if you don't use the delivery of Leonardo DiCaprio, the script's not going to be as powerful, and that's the power of tonality. So number 2 is the reasonable man tone. So this tone is used when you are making an extremely logical and reasonable case. This tone is unassuming and non-threatening. So you'll see right here I put sound fair. So this is like a famous line in sales. And when you're asking when you're like setting the frame of the call, you can say sound fair. And you see how my tonality changed to this reasonable man tone. So you want to use that in specific parts of your sales call, and it's something to be conscious of. So inquisitive tone. This tone is used to ask extremely personal questions during the qualification phase of a sales call. You raise your voice at the end of the question to signal that you are non-threatening. So this is something when you're asking personal questions like, so if you don't mind me asking, how much money are you making? Or if you don't mind me asking, how much revenue are you doing per month? So you'll notice that was with a different tone that was non-threatening. And this stuff, I'm still working on it, so this isn't even the best example. This is something that I'm still practicing every day, but it's one of the big parts of being good at sales, is tonality. So next we have empathetic tone. This tone is used when you are diving deep into pain points and uncovering problems. This tone communicates that you actually care about the prospect. Think of your mom counseling you on something. So this is when you're digging into the deep personal, emotional problems of your prospect. You want to really sound empathetic towards them, and you want to change your tone so it sounds empathetic, and it tells them that in their subconscious mind by using a different tone. So next is the enthusiastic tone. This tone is used during parts of your pitch to communicate high energy and excitement. So, right, you want to be excited about your service because it's going to change their life, right? So you notice how my tone even there just picked up and it sounded a little more enthusiastic. So that's the next tone. And then this one is my favorite. I actually use this quite often, is the whispering tone. So this tone is used when you want someone to really pay attention, like you're telling them a secret. So you guys will notice if you say something a little bit quieter than what you've been in the tone you've been speaking before, it makes them pay attention because there's a sudden tone shift, and when it makes them think that you're telling them a secret, which makes that whatever you're saying sound more important. So I might say, we only work with one agent per area, and that my tone goes down, and it really makes them pay attention, and that point gets across to them much more effectively. So those are the 5 main tones that you want to master. And what you can do is you can copy any of these. This Google Doc will be in the description. You can copy these and paste them into YouTube, and there's a video for each of them of Jordan Belfort showing you how to practice the tone, and that's something that I've been doing recently, and just practicing it every day. Like how can I master these tones, and when should I use them in my script? So if you want like real good examples of these tones, just copy them and paste them into YouTube, and there's a video of the Wolf of Wall Street himself, going into them. Okay, so wrapping up this section, maintaining frame. So you guys probably hear this a lot, like you have to maintain frame in a sales call, but what is it? So any and all of your status delta is eliminated as soon as you lose frame. I see this happen all the time where desperate or new salespeople will comply with anything the prospect says because they think that people have to like them in order to buy from them. But the truth is, people buy from people they respect. So that's something very important, guys. Don't think that the prospect has to like you to buy from you. They just have to respect you, okay? So you don't want to give in to all of them, all their needs, and lose frame. You need to hold the frame so they respect you. For example, if the prospect is asking to hear more about your service before answering questions, do not comply with them. Explain to them how the calls go, and if they aren't willing to do the call, or if they aren't willing to do so, the call will be ended. If you lose the alpha role on the call, you can basically kiss any chance at closing the deal goodbye. So I'll see this all the time where, and we'll get into the sales script in a second, but the first half of the call is you diagnosing the prospect, asking questions to gather information that you can leverage later in the call, the pitch, right? And you're also seeing if they're a good fit for your offer. And it'll happen all the time where the prospect will get on the call and they don't want to answer those questions. They just want to hear about your service. And a desperate salesperson will say, okay, and then they'll go into the service, but they just lost frame. They just lost the alpha status of the call. And that might sound cringy, but if you don't have the alpha status of the call, you're not going to close the sale. So what you would do in that, if they're like, look, I just want to hear what you have to sell me, I don't want to answer these questions, you say, listen, this is how these calls go. I just need to ask you a couple quick questions about your business to see if mine can help yours, okay? And then you would just ask the first question. That's you maintaining frame and holding the agenda and alpha role of the call. But a lot of people will just give in and they automatically lose that status. They will not close that deal. So if the prospect won't comply with your agenda for the call, just end it, because you're not going to close it. You're going to waste your time and you're going to make a fool of yourself. Yeah, right? If you lose the status delta and you lose the alpha of the call, you will not close the deal. Okay? So making your script more effective. Before digging into the actual sales scripts, I'm going to go over 5 tactics used to sharpen your sales knowledge and make the sales script delivery even more effective. So the first one is straight line selling. Do not allow the conversation to go off of the straight line. Do not jump into talking about Facebook ads, sports, or the prospect's dog. Ask your specific questions in a specific order in a professional manner. If the prospect starts going on an off-topic tangent, you need to immediately regain control of the conversation and bring them back to the straight line. So Jordan Belfort's whole idea of a sale is that you need to stay on the straight line. And, if you start veering off the straight line, so right here is, this is the straight line limit. You want to stay pretty close to it, but you'll notice this red line is touching it right here. So that means the prospect started to talk about something off topic, and the salesperson immediately brought them back into the conversation about the sales and kept the agenda going. And that's why, they came back closer to the straight line. But then you'll notice down here, the red line goes out of the boundaries, and this is the person talking about his or her son or cousin or the new car. So that's completely off topic to the sales call. So it's your job right then to say, listen, we're getting a little bit off topic, and then just tell them the next question, right? You need to hold control of the sales call the whole time. And if it goes off topic, you literally need to just interrupt the prospect and get back into the agenda of the call. Because if your call goes off topic, like our script is designed to ask certain questions in a specific order. And if the prospect's mind goes off of those questions, the psychological part of the script isn't going to work. So your job is to keep the prospect on a straight line, which is basically the agenda of the sale. And we'll get into the script in a moment. But as soon as the prospect starts talking about their cousin or a new car, anything like that that's not related to their problems or your service, immediately you just interrupt them and you basically ask the next question, or you say, that's really cool. So how long have you been in this business? And you just basically acknowledging what they say and then just asking the next question. Okay? So you never want to let the conversation go off of the straight line. So next is silence. And this is one of my favorite tactics for sales calls. So silence is by far one of the most lethal weapons used in sales. Humans naturally hate silence in a conversation because it makes them feel uncomfortable, and they will do anything to fill it. This means they will reveal more information that you can leverage to close the deal. So if the prospect gives you a poor answer to one of your questions, just don't say anything at all. They will start to feel uncomfortable and say what's exactly on their mind to fill the silence and get rid of the uncomfortableness. Silence also makes the prospect worry that their answer isn't good enough for you if the status delta has been set correctly. So guys, as soon as they answer, if they give you a very vague answer, because the whole point of you asking questions is to, 1, qualify them, and 2, get information about your prospect that you can use later in the sales call. So if they give you a very vague answer, like I've asked prospects before, like, why did you get into this business? And they say, I don't know, I'm just quiet and I don't say anything. And that silence might last a while, but it's going to make them uncomfortable. It's also going to make you uncomfortable, but you're prepared for it. And the first person to talk basically is going to just spit exactly what's on their mind, because they're so desperate to fill the silence to get rid of the uncomfortableness that they're just going to say exactly what's on their mind. And that's how you can really get prospects to give you a better answer and, really speak what they're feeling deep inside and they might be holding back. So you want to use silence throughout your sales calls. And then the word okay. So during the information gathering stage of the sales script, more on this later, you want to answer all of your prospects' answers with the word okay. This acknowledges that you've heard their answers and ensures you don't add any bias to the prospect's mind. People make the mistake of adding on to the prospect's answers and creating biases that interfere with the sales process. Even worse, people will try to solve the prospect's pain after they expose it. The core reason behind people making a buying decision is that they're in a position of pain and want it solved. So when someone exposes their pain through an answer, you just want to acknowledge it with the word okay. Instead of saying something like, well, your ads probably haven't been working because you don't have a pixel installed and that's an easy fix. People make this mistake all the time because they think they're displaying themselves as an expert, but they're just taking away the prospect's painful situation and making them much less likely to buy. Your product should be the solution to their pain, so the more pain they feel, the more likely they are to buy. So what this means is every time you ask a question to your prospect and they give you an answer, you just want to respond with the word okay. And you don't want to just, you don't want to so for example, if they say, oh, I've been in the bit, or oh, Facebook ads haven't been working for me, you don't want to say, oh, it's probably because you don't have a pixel, or oh, it's probably because you didn't do this. You just want to say okay. And then you might want to ask another question like, why haven't they been working for you? But you don't want to add on to their answer. You just want to say okay or ask the next question. And because you might add a bias. So if you say something that you might say something, and if you set the status delta right, they're going to perceive you as an expert and as a leader. So if you say something, they're going to be subconsciously afraid to maybe go against it. So you don't want to give them any biases that will stop them from saying what's really on their mind. And then you also don't want to solve their pain on the call. So a lot of people might say, oh, Facebook ads haven't been working for me. And then the other person on the sales call will say, oh, well, it's probably just because do you have a pixel installed? And then they say no. They're like, oh, well, that's probably all it is. That's an easy fix. And they think that they're displaying themselves as an expert, and that might not be the best example, but you kind of get where I'm going with this, is you don't want to solve the prospect's pain on the sales call, because that takes them out, that makes them feel at ease, right? You're easing their pain by giving them the answer on the call, but your product is supposed to be the answer, right? Not your words. It's not supposed to like people are always like, oh, hop on this call for free value, but that's stupid. Your product is supposed to be the value, right? So you don't want to solve their problems on the call. You just want to answer all their questions with okay, and then move on to the next question. So that doesn't create biases for them, and it keeps them in a position of pain, because people in pain buy solutions. So the next one is a sifter and not an alchemist. Your job as a salesperson isn't to turn every prospect into a customer, but instead sift for a qualified prospect and turn them into a customer. This is like being in the gold rush and creating gold out of thin air as an alchemist versus panning for gold in the rivers as a sifter. Just like a doctor is to his patient, you must diagnose your prospect and only prescribe them a solution if they are a fit for it. The close is a consequence of the diagnosis. If a doctor prescribed drugs without diagnosing a patient, they would be fired for malpractice. So instead of trying to convert every prospect that comes your way, focus on diagnosing and looking for a qualified fit. So this is really powerful because it means, and this is a Jordan Belfort line, is that you're a sifter and not an alchemist. So in the gold rush, your job would be to go to the river and get a little pan, and you'd scrape it in the water and the sand, and you'd look for little flakes of gold, and you'd sift through all the sand looking for gold. So this is what you want to do in sales, is you don't want to try to close every prospect. That would be like an alchemist trying to turn someone who's not a good fit and they're not qualified into a customer. You only want to turn people who are a good fit into a customer, so you have to sift through a big list of prospects and look for them. So that's why the written confirmation, that's designed to sift out the people who are most likely to be a good fit, and then you finish sifting through that smaller list on a sales call. So a lot of people think that sales means is it's like this high pressure thing where you're supposed to turn everyone who, into a high paying customer. It's your job to sift through prospects. Now, that doesn't mean you want to waste your time on unqualified leads, and that's why you want to have mechanisms like pre-written confirmation, or if you're doing really well and you're running paid ads, you want to ask a survey, and if people aren't a good fit based on their survey questions, you don't want to let them book a call. So it's not your job to take a call with everyone and anyone and try to turn them into a customer. It's your job to sift through everyone and see who's qualified for your offer and who's a good fit to work with you. Okay? So next is to avoid personal biases. Now, this is something that I used to struggle with when I first got into sales. And if you've taken multiple sales calls by now, you've probably experienced a bias towards a prospect. For example, if you find out a prospect's revenue before the call, you may have a bias towards them not being able to afford your services. This bias will manifest subconsciously and affect the outcome of the sales call. This is why it's important to go into the call with all biases left behind. Never judge the situation of a prospect with limited information. So for example, in the past, I've seen someone who they just became a real estate agent, right? And I'm like, oh, in my mind, they probably don't have any money. So, I'm going to go into this call and I'm kind of going to, when you subconsciously go into a call with a bias of thinking a prospect might not have money, you behave differently in the call. And it's really hard to explain unless you've experienced it. But this bias manifests in your tonality, and then the sale doesn't end up being closed. But I've had a situation where I found out a real estate agent had only been an agent for a month, and I still took the call with them, and it turns out that they just sold a massive business somewhere else and they had a ton of money. And if I went into that call with the bias of them being a new agent and thinking that they couldn't afford my services, I wouldn't have closed the call. And, that client's still with me today, and they did end up being a good fit. And if I would have had that bias, I wouldn't have had them, right? So you don't want to have these biases going into a call because it subconsciously manifests in your voice, and then the prospect kind of feels it, and then they're not going to answer questions honestly, and then the whole sales call falls apart and you don't close them, and you think it's just because your bias was correct, but your bias probably wasn't correct. It just manifested, through your subconscious mind. So that's pretty deep, but I promise you it's crazy how often that happens. Okay? So those are a couple, tactics to make the script more effective. So now let's actually get into the script. So before we can get into the script, you need to have a good pre-sales call ritual. So how you prepare for a sales call will often reflect the outcome. I'm going to walk you through my pre-sales call ritual. So step 1, I take a few deep breaths and leave any thoughts from the day or previous sales calls aside. You want to enter each call with a clear and calm mind, right? So if you had a sales call, if you're taking multiple sales calls per day and the one that you just took went really bad and you have another one after, you kind of want to do a quick little 5-minute meditation, just take a couple deep breaths and kind of clear your mind of anything that happened on the past sales call so you go into the next one with a clear and calm mind, okay? So I hope that makes sense. And turn your computer and phone on do not disturb, and if needed, let family members or roommates know you're taking a call. Make sure all tabs are closed besides any needed for the sales call. Make sure you have a pen and notepad ready. If the prospect filled out a survey, if you're running ads or if your booking link has questions, have those answers in front of you. So, this do not disturb thing, a lot of people don't do this. And, their phone is in the background, but they still hear a ding. 1, that doesn't look good on sales calls, but 2, that's a subconscious distraction that if you're in the middle of giving a pitch, that's just going to throw you off topic. You're going to be thinking about that. Even if you don't stop talking, in the back of your head, you're going to be thinking, oh gosh, my phone just went off. And then that's going to kind of cause you to lose focus. Or if you have even if there's no noise and you don't have do not disturb on, and you see in the top right hand corner of your computer where you're taking the Zoom call, a notification that's a text message, you're going to subconsciously very quickly read it, and that's going to take your mind off of the sales call. So a lot of people don't do that. You just want to always put your things on your phone and your computer. If you have Apple products, if you turn it on your computer, it will go turn on everything, your iPad, your phone, your watch, whatever. So you want to turn that on before a sales call. And then, if you have roommates or family members, just let them know, maybe put a little doorknob thing that says in a sales call so they know not to knock on the door or talk really loud, because all these things are going to subconsciously distract you and just decrease your overall performance on the call, okay? And then the next one is be ready to start the Zoom meeting 5 to 10 meetings before the proposed time. Oftentimes, an eager prospect will show up early. So you want to start the Zoom call 5 to 10 meetings before and then just kind of hang out, take a couple deep breaths. But I've had it where a prospect joins 5 minutes before because they're just really eager. And, you want to just show that, hey, I was early and prepared as well. So you want to have the meeting already ready, okay? And then now let's get into the sales script. So now let's dive into the sales script that I use. The script comes from Sam Oven's $2,000 course and is widely used by some of the biggest names in the space like Charlie Morgan and Ravi Abuvala. So this is Sam Oven's script. I did not create it. I used it and I got it from his $2,000 course. I found it to be extremely effective, and a lot of big names in the space, like Charlie Morgan, are using this script themselves and have closed hundreds and hundreds of clients. So it's a super effective script. Okay, so part one, small chat. So as soon as you get on the call with the prospect, you just want to say, you don't want to just jump in straight in the call. Like, you don't want to talk to them for a while. You just want to say, it's just a transition into the call, right? Because it would be awkward if you're just like, okay, preface for the call. No, you want to say, hey Bob, how's your day going so far? That's it. Let them give you a quick answer. If they go on for too long, you want to barge in, but normally they'll just say good. How about yours? You say good, and then you say, really quickly, before we get started, are you comfortable with me recording this call in case we have to refer back to it in the future? So I ask all the prospects permission to record. I've never gotten a no. I've heard people get a no, 1 out of 1,000 times. They will basically always say yes, and then after they say yes, just press record and say, great, well, let's dive in and get started if you're ready. So we're not asking them about their family. We just really quickly, as a transition, say, how's your day going? And then, ask them for permission to record. And then we set the frame. We say, great, well, let's get started. And then we move on to part two. Okay? So part two is set agenda and take lead. So now you're going to say, okay, so a little preface to the call. I'm just going to ask you a couple questions about your business, some of your goals, and some of your challenges. Then if it sounds like we're a good fit, I'll explain more about our program and what we do. And then at the end, you can decide if you want to be a part of it or not. And then you just want to shut up. And you want to wait for them to say okay. It's very important that they acknowledge it and they're okay with moving forward. So you wait for them to speak, even if it takes 15, 20 seconds. And the purpose of this is you setting the agenda and maintaining that frame. And then you're making it so there's no surprises at the end, because you're saying basically at the end you're going to decide, right? And that's priming them to make a decision later in the call. So this sales script, all these questions are being asked in a specific order that's psychologically proven to get them into a buying state. So you don't want to veer off this script too much, even if you're uncomfortable asking some of these things. I promise you it works. You just have to get used to it and practice it. Okay, so after they say okay, when you set the agenda, we move on to part three, and this is discovering the prospect's motivations. So you want to ask them, so okay, Bob, can you tell me what motivated you to take the time out of your day to get on this call with me? And then normally, most of the time you can get a very good detailed answer, but if they give you a very vague answer, one, you can use silence, or you can ask a couple other questions to dig deeper. So if they give you a very vague answer and it's not much to work with, you can say, well, tell me more about that. Or you can say, well, what do you mean by that? Or you can say, so how long have you been dealing with this? Why do you think this problem exists? What else have you tried to fix this? And that's going to give you more info. And then once you have a good answer and a good reason of their main pain point and why they're on this call with you, then you can move on to part four, which is understanding the prospect's current situation. So this part of the script will depend on your prospect's niche. So for me, it's basically, how long have you been a real estate agent? But if you're in the gym niche, you'd say, well, how long have you been a gym owner? If you're in the dentist niche, well, how long have you been a practicing doctor? And you kind of want to use your niche's language. So how long have you been a real estate agent? And then, they'll give you your answer. You want to write it down. So that's why I said have a pen and notepad out, and you want to write this down. So one, it looks like you're really paying attention to what they're saying, because you are. But two, later in the call, you're going to want to be able to quickly look down and remember this stuff so you can use it as leverage. Okay. So, you basically ask them, how long have you been a real estate agent? They answer, you write it down. And remember, guys, we're just saying okay to every answer. We're not adding biases in. We're not, solving their pain. We're just saying okay. And this might take a little bit to practice because it feels, wrong subconsciously. But and then next we say, so what current strategies are you using to generate leads and turn strangers into clients? So obviously this question is going to be different. If it's a gym owner, you'd say, so what current strategies are you using to take strangers and turn them into gym members? So you just want to, apply this to your niche. And after they give you that answer, you can dig a little bit deeper if they don't give you. So basically, you'll notice some prospects to these questions, they'll go on a little bit of a tangent about the topic and they'll give you a lot of information. But if they just say something very vague, then you want to say, are you comfortable with your current system's growth? Is the current strategy predictable and scalable? And then how much time and effort does your current strategy require? And this is gonna, if they're giving you vague answers, this will help you dig a little deeper. But you'll notice some people will literally say, like if I ask them, how are you turning strangers into clients? They'll say, well, referrals, and I'm really not comfortable with that because referrals have been slow this weekend. So see, they just like answered that question. But if they don't answer that, you can dig deeper by adding this on, okay? So then you just say, okay, and then you want to ask them this question, which a lot of people are afraid to ask this, and you just got to get over that because this is the most important question of the call. And it's, okay, and if you don't mind me asking, how much money are you currently making with your real estate business? So you can even ask, like, if there's some specific thing to your niche, like I might say, how much are you currently taking home in commissions per month? Or, so you can ask, it doesn't have to be exactly, money. You could say like commissions or gross commission income, whatever language matches your niche. And then do not move on until you get a specific number. So do whatever you have to do to get that number. Most of the time, if you say it with the reasonable man tone, like, okay, and if you don't mind me asking, how much money are you currently making with your real estate business? So see, that was with a non-threatening tone, and we said, if you don't mind me asking, that will normally get them to give the answer, okay? So do not move on until you get a specific number. And then we can move on to part 5 once you have gotten that number, and this is figure out what the prospect wants. So say, okay, Bob, what is a 12-month goal for your real estate business? So now you just want to get kind of their idea for the next 12 months and where they're trying to get to. And this is also making them, really dig deep into what they want. And then when you present your solution, you want to curate it to their desires. Okay? So after you ask that, you just say, okay, and how much money would you like to be making with this business 12 months from now? So this is where you basically want to get to their goal in terms of dollars. And then, you can dig a little bit deeper by saying, if they don't give you the answers, again, you can say, so what's your motivation for getting to XX per month? So if you go watch my live sales call on my channel, I asked this question and the prospect said he basically had, kids in college that he had to pay for. And that's putting all the cards on the table, okay? How would getting this impact your business? How would getting to this impact other areas of your life? And if they give you an extremely low number, and if the goal number is very close to their current number, you want to say in like a reasonable tone, you basically want to ask them if they think going on beyond that number is possible. And you kind of want to cheer them on. You want to be like, look, Bob, I'm going to be honest, that number is really low. And based on what you told me so far, I think you can blow that number out of the water. Right? So you kind of want to encourage them a little, and I forget what tone that is, but you guys know what I mean. And you basically just want to, if they give you a really low number, you kind of want to make them believe they can have a bigger goal, especially if your product is known to help them go way past that goal. So part 6, prospect releases control. Okay, Bob. So you're currently making, and then the amount of money that they told you per month, and you want to get to per month. What do you think the biggest obstacle in your way from getting there, or what do you think is the biggest obstacle in your way from getting there on your own? So, you want to establish where they are right now and where they want to get to, followed by what do you think is the biggest obstacle that's in their way from getting there on their own. And this is going to make them really think, and you really want to write this down. Like, what is the biggest thing in their way from them getting there on their own? Because you can use this later when you're handling objections or when you're giving your pitch. Okay? So you really want to get this answer. And then we can move on to part 7, which is gaining commitment and increasing emotion. So, okay, Bob, so you're currently making, and then the money. Why not just stay where you are? So you want to ask them, like, you want to dig a little deeper into their emotional reason for wanting to hit this goal. And then you want to say, okay, and how is, and then insert their main problem having an impact on you. So if they said their main problem was they don't have a good lead flow, then you'd want to say, okay, and how is having a bad lead flow having an impact on you? Right? So you want to reiterate their pain. And then once you get an answer from that, you want to say, and this is a very important question, you want to say, okay, and if we are a good fit and can help you fix your lead flow, right, the problem, how soon would you be looking to get started? So you want to ask them basically how soon they'd be willing to get started if there is a good fit, right? So you really want to know when, and a lot of them will say immediately, and then later in the sales call, if they try to give you the objection of, oh, I think I need to wait, you're going to say, well, Bob, you told me earlier you want to get started immediately, and I'm confident that we're a good fit for, and then, I'll get into that later. But, you see how asking these questions, it paints everything out in the prospect's mind and primes them ready to buy, but it gives you information that you can use later in the call if they try objecting your pitch, okay? So, and then after we've done that, you basically just want to move on to part 8, which is the permission to pitch. And coming back to the idea of tonality, this line is best said with the certainty tone. So you want to say, okay, Bob, well, we can definitely help you out. Would you like me to explain more about what we do? So see how I said the definitely help you out part with a certainty in my tone? So you want to say that, and then you're asking them for permission. So wait until they say yes. And this is basically you asking them for permission to give them a pitch. And so part 9, expert in your field. Well, here at Ardent Advertising, our area of expertise is in helping real estate agents close more deals. We do this with our listing accelerator done for you machine. So that's just like an example, right? So this part right here will take a little bit to master. And then after you say that, you want to say the ideal real estate agent for us to work with is typically making between X dollar and X dollar and has X years to X years of experience selling real estate. This line will take some time to perfect, and you want to deliver it with a powerful and certain tone. You want the prospect to think, that's me. So when you say this, when you say, for example, is making between X amount and X amount, you want your prospect to be right in the middle of that number. And this line will take a while to come up with like a good name for your solution, but it's very, very worthwhile investing time into coming up with it because it makes the prospect feel like, yes, this is the expert to help me, right? So you want to kind of say why you think they're a good fit, and you want that to click in their mind. So for example, for us is typically making, you could also, if it's in your niche, I could say the ideal real estate agent for us to work with is typically closing between 1 to 2 transactions per month and has 5 to 10 years of experience selling real estate. So you see how I kind of made this line to my niche? You want to do that as well, and you want to kind of practice different things until you find what sounds very powerful, okay? And you'll know when it does, trust me. And you'll see how the market reacts to it. So once you've done that, part 10 is pitching your offer. So you must talk about it at a high level, but keep it vague. Don't talk about the processes or the features or anything like that because you will trigger the wrong feature brain in your prospect, and you want to keep their brain fixed on the outcome. The area of your script you will have to write out yourself because everybody's service and offer is different. Write it out, practice saying it in the mirror, and get the delivery to be perfect. Your description on how everything works should be no more than 2 minutes, and you should not talk about price. So then, guys, I don't use slideshows. I just give them a very quick 2-minute overview of my service without getting too deep into features. Because remember, based on how we've asked them these questions, they are in an emotional and painful state, and they think that we're, the perfect solution for them, and we want to keep them in this state. But when you start talking about all these features, it slowly takes them out of that state because they really start thinking about those features. So, you really want to come up with the perfect 2-minute pitch of your product without going too deep into features, and never give the price. So you basically want to give that pitch and then shut up. And now your prospect will start asking you questions about how it works, and they will keep asking questions until they have a clear understanding of exactly how it works and more importantly, how it will work for them. When you present your offer in vague detail, the prospect then asks for all the pieces they need to understand, and then they keep asking until they have the full picture that they need. So the reason they need is capitalized is because, guys, a lot of people will give these like 10-minute pitches of their product, and they give way more information than that prospect needs, right? Every prospect has their own questions about your offer, and you just want to give a vague pitch and then let them ask questions because they're going to give you what's most important to them. So this avoids us covering everything and blowing them over with features, and it just lets them target the questions that they specifically have, and then all we have to do is answer those. Okay, does that make sense? So, and a lot of people mess up with this, and it takes their prospect out of this state because they give them a 10-minute pitch. Instead, you want to give a very vague pitch, and then your prospect will ask what they need to know in order to make a buying decision. So as you answer these questions, be careful not to divert the conversation. Just answer the specific specific questions they asked, and then shut up. So it's very easy when a prospect asks a question, well, how does this work? It's very easy to go on a long tangent. You just want to give them enough information that it answers the question, it just answers the question, and then shut up. And eventually, your prospect will keep asking questions until they have everything they need, and then they will ask you the price. So you never want to give the prospect the price until they ask you. So this phase 10, is completed once they ask you the price, okay? And then you can move on to part 11. And this is closing with incentive-based pricing. So this sounds really sales and gimmickly, and I used to think this. Don't let that become a subconscious bias until you try it. This stuff works. You guys can actually go see my live sales call. I use this and this is how you close one calls. Like a lot of you guys are doing 2 calls, but 1 calls are so much more efficient, and you do it with incentive-based pricing. So you say this, when they ask the price, you say, well, we normally charge, and then I'll just use an example. So, well, we normally charge $2,000 per month, but we found that our best clients were the ones who decided to take action immediately, and they also tend to get the best results. So for that reason, we do something called incentive-based pricing, where if you're ready to get started today, it will only be $1,500 per month. And then you shut up. This silence can sometimes last 1 to 2 minutes and will be extremely uncomfortable. You must learn to stay silent until the prospect speaks. So incentive-based pricing is extremely powerful because it motivates the prospect to make a decision on that first call. And then you don't have to waste any time on a follow-up. And if you guys were to do this in a 2 call, all you would do is split up the script where you ask all the questions. And then once you get to the part on telling them why they're a good fit, instead of giving a pitch, you say, we'll schedule a second call where I'll show you on Zoom, how more about our product. And then you'd give the pitch on that call. So you can do this in a 2-call close if you really want to, but guys, trust me, just do this as 1 call. Just trust me, take the leap. You'll never go back. So incentive-based pricing is so powerful, and as soon as you give this, you just want to shut up, okay? And after that, you guys, this can sometimes literally last 2 minutes, and that's the prospect kind of doing the math in their head of the ROI, and they're either going to say, okay, let's do it, or they're going to handle objections. So part 11, let's just say they say yes. You must always collect payment on the call. If the prospect needs to talk to a business partner or wife/husband, you need to ask them for a small commitment. This can be a $100 to $200 refundable deposit to hold their incentive-based pricing. If they don't give you this deposit, then it's probably just used as a smokescreen. So say you give them the price, you shut up, they think about it for 45 seconds, they say, okay, I'm in, but I do have to talk to my wife. Then you want to say, okay, Bob, I totally understand. I think that's good for you to make this decision, not to make this decision before talking with your wife. However, in order to hold your incentive-based pricing, I do need some small form of commitment from you. That being said, I can take a $100 or $200 refundable deposit, and then, next time after you talk to your wife, if she says it's a no-go, I will refund that to you. And that's basically just hold their incentive-based pricing. And if you get that commitment from them, then they genuinely need to just talk to their wife and they are interested. But if they don't give you that, if they don't give you the deposit, they're not going to buy, and they never were most of the time. Okay. So that's a way to kind of weed that out. But now let's talk about objections. So if they don't say yes, and if you don't get a refundable deposit, they're going to give you an objection. And what that might look like is, an objection is almost always a smokescreen for the prospect not having enough certainty in you or your company. Jordan Belford teaches a strategy called looping to combat objections and increase certainty. If the prospect complains about the price, say, okay, Bob, well, hypothetically, money aside, does the idea make sense to you? Do you like it? And say this with the reasonable man tone. So say the prospect, you give them the price and they start complaining about the price. Say, you want to say with a reasonable man tone, you say, okay, Bob, well, hypothetically, money aside, does the idea make sense? Do you like it? And what this does is you're deflecting their objection. So most people would just freak out, not know what to say. The prospect explains about the price. They say, okay, well, I'm sorry. And then they end the call. But you want to keep the rapport going. So when you say this, you want to pay very close attention to the prospect's tonality when they answer the question. Pay close attention to how certain they sound in your idea. If they sound uncertain, you need to justify your services ROI with the certainty tone, this will deflect the objection and loop you back into rapport where you can work on increasing the prospect's tonality. So let's say we ask them the hypothetical question, money aside. They say, yeah, I kind of like the idea. I'm just a little nervous about this. And you can tell what their main concern is, but also you see how my tonality sounded like I wasn't very certain? Depending on how certain they are based on their tonality, then you want to increase their certainty, right? So what you would do is you'd say, like say someone says this. So say that I give Bob a price, and he says, well, I think that's a little expensive. So I say, okay, Bob, well, hypothetically, money aside, does the idea make sense to you? He says, yeah, it kind of makes sense to me. I'm just a little bit nervous about closing the leads that I'm paying for. Then I would say, listen, Bob, these leads are so good, I'm thinking about getting my real estate license myself. You will get a ROI on our service. In fact, here's Joseph. This is his case study. He got 130% ROI in the first 30 days. So you see how I'm increasing his certainty by looping, right? That's called a loop. So instead of just, acknowledging his objection, we deflect it with the hypothetical question. Then he answers us. We identify how certain he is. We identified that he's not that certain. So then we basically make him more certain by giving him an example and justifying the ROI with a very certain tone. Okay? And then what you'll notice is this is going to keep the rapport going. And even if you don't have a case study, you can just do what I said, where it's like, listen, these leads are so good, I'm thinking about becoming a real estate agent myself. In fact, I'll actually show you the quality of some of these leads right now. So you just want to do whatever you can to increase their certainty. Instead of acknowledging the objection and ending the call, you're looping the sales conversation. So this is what Jordan Belfort invented, and it's called a loop. So your main goal in responding to objections is to keep the rapport going and increase the prospect's certainty in you and your company. But as soon as you notice the prospect is feeling pressured and you want to end the sales call, and depending on the sentiment of the call, have a clear next steps like a follow-up call. So you want to keep doing this looping until they either make a decision. But if you notice that they're feeling really pressured and they're starting to sweat and they're starting to get nervous, you just want to end the call. You just like, hey, look, Bob, this has been a long conversation. I've really enjoyed talking to you, but I do think, we should just follow up tomorrow. Sound good? Or sound fair in the reasonable tone? So if you notice that they're feeling pressured, you want to just end it right there, or you're going to kind of lose, that connection with them. So you don't want to keep pushing them if they're pressured. You just want to try to end the call and then schedule a follow-up, right? And you might lose that sale, you might not, but you don't want to just be pressure selling into buying that much, right? So you want to keep looping as much as possible. It keeps the rapport going, and you use it to increase the prospect's certainty. And you can do that by, with your tonality, by pulling up case studies, by pulling up examples of the leads you generate, by showing an ROI example, stuff like that, okay? The two most common objections are, I need to think about it, and I don't have money. So how can we respond to these? So first one, I need to think about it. We say, is there something in particular you need to think about so that we can discuss it right now? So you guys will notice we're keeping the rapport going. So we're not saying, okay, think about it. Let's follow up in a week, and then you never hear back from them. You're keeping the rapport going and you're deflecting the objection. So, hey, Bob, I totally understand. Well, why don't you tell me, is there something in particular that you need to think about so we can discuss it right now while I'm here on this call? And then depending on what they say, then you want to, give them an answer that increases their certainty with a certainty tone. Or a riskier approach to really maintain the status authority, you can say, listen, Bob, in my experience, when someone says that, it's just because it means there's something in particular that they don't have enough clarity on. While I'm still here on this call with you, what is it specifically that you're needing to think about? So that's like a riskier approach that, if pulled off correctly, will really set you, make you this authority figure on the call. So you can use either of those, but you never want to end the call when they say they need to think about it. You want to give it one looping cycle and go back into rapport. And then another big objection is, I don't have the money. And then you want to say, well, Bob, isn't that why we had this call to begin with? And then you want to justify your services ROI with the certainty tone. And then bonus points if you can pull up social proof, right? So these are the most two common objections. However, as you take more sales calls, you'll learn more about specific niche objections. Create a Google Doc where you write down a new objection every time you hear one. Then spend time reflecting and come up with a response to every objection. Remember, the main goal of an objection response is to keep the rapport going and increase certainty. Having this Google Doc will make training sales reps much easier in the future. So of course, there's going to be very common objections that you keep hearing. So every time you hear a new objection, write it down in a Google Doc or on a piece of paper, and then spend time later, after the call or after your work day, really reflecting on those objections and coming up with answers that will loop them back into rapport and increase certainty. And then, you kind of have this list, and what I do is I turn them into flashcards, and then, you have these little times in between sales calls during the day where you have 10 minutes free, and you don't really have anything to do. That's when I look over those flashcards. And then in the future, if you start hiring salespeople, it's going to make their job so much easier if you already have a list of the most common objections and what's working. And then if you notice that your objection response isn't working, then change it and try a new objection response and then add that to the list. Okay? So that's it for the sales script, but there's just one final point I want to end on, and it's sales is a sport. So sales, like a sport, requires a lot of energy and focus. Just like a professional athlete, you want to get 8 hours of high quality sleep, eat healthy non-processed foods, track your progress, and rewatch your game footage. That being said, don't eat unhealthy foods within 24 hours of a sales call, and make sure to get 8 hours of high quality sleep the night before. So guys, sales really is a sport. It takes a lot of mental, focus to, turn someone from a nice cold prospect into a happy paying customer. So I don't eat sugar, 24 hours before a sales call. If I do eat sugar, it's on a Friday, because then there's, Friday or Saturday, because then there's 24 hours before I take calls on the weekday. And you'll notice, if you really keep track of it, you'll notice it does decrease your performance and you're less focused. So, you want to eat healthy whole foods, and you want to get an Oura ring, right? And you want to start really tracking your sleep and improving it, so you're not just getting 7, 8 hours of sleep, but it's high quality sleep. You're going to do so much better on sales calls. You're going to be so much more focused. So don't be the business owner who records every sales call just to never revisit them. Being able to review your sales calls from a third-person perspective is extremely powerful and will result in rapid improvement. I like to set aside Sundays to review all the week's sales calls and keep notes of what's working and what's not working. So that's why we're asking for permission to record, but a lot of people will just record their sales calls and never look at them, right? So the first benefit is that we can go back and rewatch them from a third-person perspective. And it's kind of a weird example, but when I was a kid, I grew up skateboarding. And, a lot of the times we would record ourselves skateboarding, and when I was actually skating in first-person perspective, I would do a trick, and it would feel really good, and it would feel really clean. And then when I go watch the footage, I'll notice that it did not look as good as it felt. And that's kind of a weird example, but it's the same with sales calls. You'll get done with a call and you'll think you did perfect, but then when you go back and watch it from a third-person perspective, and while you were giving the pitch and you were focused on your screen, you'll be able to see the prospect's reactions to what you're saying, and you'll be like, wait, I should have said that differently. And then you can make that change on the next call. So even if you think that you're killing it, trust me, watch the footage. You'll find things that aren't working, but most importantly, you'll see what is working. So even if you close the prospect, you still want to rewatch the footage so you can see what went right. And then just every Sunday or every whatever day you watch the replays, you just want to write down what's working and what's not working, and then add that to your next sales call. And this is going to help you rapidly improve. And you're having this feedback loop until you just get really, really good at sales. Okay, so make sure to track your sales calls using this and the sheets in the document. This will be in the description. Click File and make a copy. So this is what it looks like, and you just have one for every month. So what you do is you put the date of the call here. You put if it's the first call, you just put first call. If you only do first calls, just put first call for all of them. But if you are, sometimes even the prospect, if you get a deposit, then you'd hop on a second call with them. So that's why I have it. And then the lead's name, the lead source. So then you can see, hey, all the calls I'm closing, they're coming from, this source. So I should double down on that source. And then second call, this is where you would put, if they booked a second call, here you would just put yes. And if they didn't, you just put no, even if you close them. And then result, so just briefly, type out the result of the sales call. And then recording, this is where you upload all your sales calls to a Google Drive, and then you'll link the Google Drive link in here, and then the call link. So this is a piece of data that's very important. You can kind of see, okay, really good sales calls are about this call length, and really bad calls are about this call length. So I should aim to, try to make calls this call length. So it's just another piece of data that you can use. And then emotions. So this is where it gets really important, and I have a video all on sales emotions. I actually linked it right here. Definitely go check that out, and you'll know why it's important to track your emotions. I don't want to dig into it too much this video because I have a whole nother 10-minute video just on that. And then, so what you want to do is that, and then this is going to allow you to see a lot of feedback of what's happening. And I have a really deep video on why this spreadsheet is so powerful for escalation cycles and sales calls. And if that sounds confusing, you go watch my 10-minute video on it. But the most important thing is to track your sales calls. And then, guys, when if you lose the call, what you want to do is this. Is for result. You just want to come to highlight, and then you highlight it red. And if you don't get a deposit, highlight it red. But if you do get a deposit and the sales status is still open, you want to put yellow. And then if he comes back on the call and he's like, yeah, I'm not going to move forward, my wife said no, then you just want to fill it red. And then if it is a good call, you want to fill it green. And then this is going to allow you to see, how sales data plays out on a long time frame. Again, you can go watch my 10-minute video on that. So guys, this is it for my entire sales process. I really hope this is valuable. This sales process right here changed my whole entire perspective on sales. It's helped me, close 6 clients now in a saturated niche. And, I really just started implementing it only like 2 months ago, after I took Consulting Accelerator, which is Sam Ovens' course, and then Nick Kosman's course. So this is inspired by Nick Kosman and Sam Ovens. So I kind of just combined, their ideas into this sales process, and it's been working really well. I'm starting to scale very aggressively now. And guys, seriously, if you watch this whole video, you're going to win. Like, if you really watch this whole video, you took notes, and, you're implementing, you are going to win. So with all that being said, this is the sales process. You can copy the script right here and put it onto another Google Doc, start practicing it, start working on your tonality, rewatch this video, guys. Literally, the sales module from the courses I take, I rewatch them every other week. And that's to keep this stuff on the top of my mind and really make sure that I'm implementing it. So with all that being said, I hope this was valuable. If you did enjoy the video, leave a like. And the most important part is